So I have a request from viewers to talk about IFHE and if IFHE is useful or not. It's been a while since we've done a Zath Chat. For those of you guys who are unfamiliar with Zath Chats, we just talk a little bit about something going on with the game. Could be a mechanic or a hot button issue. Kind of like a podcast, if you will. People in Discord can tune in, or can of course speak up and share their opinions. Chat on YouTube and later YouTube once this goes out to YouTube, of course, and Twitch. You guys, of course, are more than welcome, and Kick and Rumble too. You guys are more than welcome to chime in with your own opinions as well on this. So the question was, to IFHE or not to IFHE. IFHE stands for Inertial Fuse for High Explosive. And as a skill, it's meant to increase the penetration, giggity, of high explosive shells. Now, there is no IFHE for carriers, so we don't need to worry about carriers, but we can talk about some of the other classes. So let's start by looking at battleships and talk about battleships where IFHE, should you be running IFHE in your build or not. This is interesting because, frankly, for most battleships, you don't want to do that. You heard that just as you were walking away. There you go. So I'm going to start with looking at... There's the Heinrich. Where is my tier 10? It would help if I told it to find the 10, as well. Let me just do that. Too many ships in the game. You guys ever feel like that?
Yeah.
What is this? Did I never... That's right. I reground all the lines and I never bought the 10. Okay, whatever. I'll just discuss it on the Ruprecht then. That's fine. The Ruprecht is an example of a line where IFHE does come in handy. And the reason why that's the case is IFHE, as you can see here, it impacts the secondary and main battery penetration. However, look at the red. This is really important. Your chances of a fire from an HE shell is cut in half. So you get 25% more raw damage because you have 25% better penetration, but then you have half the fire chance. Okay, what's up, Sergeant Sully? So in a lot of cases, choosing IFHE hurts your chance to start fires and will hurt your damage output in the long run. Okay, what's up, OT2? Happy Friday. Lord Inquisitor, hello. Everybody's starting to come in now. We're talking about IFHE. Now, for IFHE, it's really important to note that there's a special magical threshold that you want to achieve at the higher tiers. And that number is 32 millimeters of penetration. Okay? Matter of fact, maybe what I should do is I should do the Prince Heinrich, the Azure Lane Prince Heinrich, because it's a premium ship, so I can just show you here on this. So, your secondaries, because of 1/4 HE pen, your 105s standard do not penetrate 32 millimeters of armor. And again, that's really important because at the higher tiers, 32 opens up a whole host of opportunities. Let me show you guys without a commander that has IFHE. So this, for example, might be a more standard secondary build that a lot of people are used to playing. This is a secondary build on a standard German battleship. You'll note that there is no IFHE here, even though it's recommended specifically for the Prince Heinrich. Look at your secondary penetration now. Your armor penetration is now down to 26. That's a big difference. So essentially, a 105 millimeter shell will hit a target, and if that target is 32 millimeter armor, it will not penetrate, it will shatter instead. Now, it could start a fire, but it doesn't do that raw damage, the 1/6 damage from the penetration. And for ships like the Schlieffen line, IFHE really does help because it causes far more just raw damage that's done in a quicker period of time. You think about fires. Fires do damage over time, but fires can be negated through DCP and through a heal. Penetration damage is less healable, And obviously you can't just DCP away penetration damage anyways. So keep that in mind. Now the 150s obviously will pen 38 automatically. They have enough pen. So really you're talking about, for battleships, IFHE is only useful when you've got a secondary battleship, in my opinion, a secondary battleship that's got a lot of secondaries at a lower penetration threshold, so 26. Now, what does that 26 millimeter pen get you? Let's go back to tier 10 for a second. Let me drop that, go to tier 10, and we're going to take a look at a whole host of battleships. This is one of the things that you can do in the game, is you can look at the armor scheme of ships. What do I gain from that IFHE? Well, take a look. For Ohio, now IFHE allows me in the Schlieffen to penetrate with those 105s, the 32 millimeter fore-end armor plating, so the entire bow, and the entire stern of an Ohio. You'll note that it doesn't quite have enough pen. It's 38 millimeter, doesn't have enough pen for the deck armor. But with IFHE, and even without it, those 150 secondaries will penetrate. Obviously, they won't penetrate the armor belt, they won't penetrate the side plating, and both of them will penetrate the superstructure. So you have to think about, making sure that the damage you are trying to make happen is going to happen appropriately. For an Ohio, a lot of times you may see a more bow-in approach from an enemy ship. So you're looking at hitting an Ohio, they're pointing their bow at you. If you've got manual secondaries, then your secondaries will typically hit in the center of the ship. So they're actually going to hit the bow section. So that 32 millimeter penetration actually does matter. It does a pretty good amount of extra damage. Now let's move on to Kurfürst, your standard German ship. Now you can do this for any ship. You can see Kurfürst has 32 millimeter as well on the upper part, and then it goes to 50 for the deck, and then 32 for the stern. So 32 does help again in Kurfürst. Not a ton, but it does help. Conqueror, the British battleships, and the French battleships have 32 millimeter plating all around, including deck armor and upper armor belt on the side. Your IFHE secondaries absolutely chew through these battleships.
And then the Kremlin has 64 millimeters, the fore and aft.
Right. Because, Soviet. So you got 32 millimeters here for, again, the Colombo, the Italian, okay? Go to Japanese. What do we have for the Japanese? We got 32 millimeter on the bow as well. It's a pretty large section of 32 millimeter actually on the Yamato. The upper armor belt is also 32 millimeter, right? And then you go to the back and also 32 millimeter here as well. So actually a pretty large section of the Yamato as well. You notice Georgia and Massachusetts have 32 all over. You did not enjoy that, yeah? Bungo line. So the battle cruiser, you can see now these have 25 on the bow and stern. IFHE is not necessary for those 105s to do their penetration, but it is necessary for the deck armor and armor belt here on the side plating. So you get the idea. A lot of ships, and you just have to look at each of them and figure out, okay, what kind of opponents am I going to see? Doesn't matter. Here's 27 millimeter on Rhode Island. 105s do not penetrate because they have 26, okay? And then you've got the 38 here on the side. Every ship is different. Slava. I talked to people about Slava before. Why is Slava a thing? Look at this. It's 25 millimeter bow. Everything just chews it up at close range. 32 millimeter deck armor. That's why Slava is a sniping ship in the backfield. So for battleships, you really want to think, is that IFHE going to get me anything measurable? Here's a Burgon, okay? Burgon's got 127 millimeter secondaries and 152 millimeter secondaries. And you can see my captain here does not have IFHE. Let me just switch it over to some random 21 pointer. And again, 21 millimeter, 25 millimeter. We said 32 is the magic number. So let's take a look. And if we go to 32, or if we go to IFHE, do we get 32? We get 26 on the 127s, and we get 31 on the 152s. So there's no point in running IFHE on a Burgon. It's not going to help. Yes, it'll help a little bit more pen for you know, bow armor of 25, 26, etc. But you are giving up a lot of your fire chance in the process of doing so. So generally speaking, you wouldn't want to do IFHE on a Burgon. These are 127s. Now, I bring that up because there's a lot of other battleships. Let me look for French here. French battleships is another line where you see a lot of people say, do I want to run IFHE? Okay, Repub's got the 127s. I'm thinking about Alsace then at tier 9. Alsace has 100 millimeter secondaries. So what do you get for that? You go, oh boy, 21 millimeter pen. It doesn't even help you against cruisers, right? So, and then again, you don't get to that magic 32 number for your 152s. So, generally speaking, IFHE is really only going to be useful on the Schlieffen line for battleships. Big O was asking in chat, well, what about Los Andes and Libertad, right? They're 127 mil and 234. Well, the 234 already penetrate. What's up, Cosmos? The 234 already penetrate 32 millimeters of armor, right? The only thing they don't pen is the Kremlin armor, like Tanis, what you were just saying. And then there's the 127s. That, again, they aren't going to be enough to pen either. You heard a good, convincing argument that IFHE is not good on Schlieffen. Again, note you are looking at a trade-off. If you value fires more, then yes, IFHE is not good on Schlieffen. Schlieffen is probably the only line of battleship where IFHE is going to be useful. All the other ones just don't do enough raw damage. Let's go to Soviet for a sec. Do I have Kremlin still? I do. Some people, by the way, have noticed that the Kremlin does have the 32 armor fore and end and upper area, so it can still get penned here by 32 millimeter pen by IFHE Schlieffens. But then you've got the 60 millimeter deck armor. So I've seen some people talking about how in ranked, these ships are far more resilient to the new the new Pan-American battleships secondaries because of that. But anyways, like I said, the only battleship line you're probably going to want to look at putting secondaries on is going to be Schlieffen. Everything else, for IFHE, for everything else, you're really not going to benefit from IFHE. And matter of fact, it's really just going to hurt you. And of course, ships that have SAP secondaries, like, for example, Giuseppe Verdi, as a battleship here, IFHE doesn't help, right? Because it doesn't impact the penetration of SAP shells. So there's no need to try to buff the penetration from these secondaries at all. So again, it's really just the Germans, specifically the Schlieffen line, and that's it. Now I want to comment on something real quick too with the secondary battleships. Let me go back to, hold on a sec here, Prince Heinrich. What I see a lot of players doing when they do put their IFHE secondaries on, let me go back to Lutyens, is they'll follow the recommended skill here and run Demo Expert to get that 1% fire chance back added, because you lose half of your fire chance. So you can see 2.5% here. Well, why bother? True, but I just want to mention you do have flags that you can put that do add fire chance. The 1% can have an impact because you take the half first and then you just add the 1% on top. But I want to mention that there's a better skill. Instead of compensating for the fire, what you really want to be thinking is, if you're investing IFHE for the raw damage in your secondaries and full secondary build, you're going to want to look at preventative maintenance to keep your secondaries alive. That's much more important than one measly extra fire chance %. So keep that in mind if you're running Schlieffen build with IFHE. You absolutely want preventative maintenance, especially if you've got Lutyens. That's even better. All right, let's talk about cruisers now. Cruisers are in a really odd place when it comes to penetrating with IFHE here. Let me look at French, and let me pull up Tier 7 and Tier 8 for a moment. Alright. And I want to look at Bayard. Now, Wargaming did something different a while back with Tier 8 and up cruisers that have 162 millimeter caliber. They don't penetrate at 1/6, which is the original penetration rule. So you take the caliber, you divide it by 6, and that's what the penetration characteristics is of the main guns and secondaries. What they did was at Tier 8 and up, they changed it to 1/5. So you can see that Bayard penetrates 30 millimeters of armor plating, 30. Now, again, I told you that the magic number is going to be 32 for any ship penetrating battleship armor, typically. Okay, for cruisers and stuff, IFHE is less important because most cruisers are going to have, let me go to armor layout, for example. They're going to have 25 millimeter fore and stern armor. They'll typically have lower than 32 for side plating and for deck armor, okay? But 32 can still help on certain cruisers, of course. I'm trying to think of the ones off the top of my head, but there are some where it does have an impact. But for the most part, IFHE isn't going to help you against cruisers. It's just going to help you farming battleships. Now, for a cruiser build, let me just throw this dude on. For a cruiser build, the problem with cruisers is that IFHE is extremely expensive. For battleships, it was a 2-point skill, but for cruisers, it's a 4-point skill. So, alright, fine. Let's say I want to build IFHE. I'm just going to go follow my core build, and then I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to put IFHE on. Okay? Now my 152's pen 32 millimeters armor. They go up to 37. Yay! What do I sacrifice to do this? Of course, I lose my 50% of my fire chance. More importantly, in my opinion, for cruisers, you lose the 4 captain points. So you lose a lot of the flexibility in how you build your cruisers. For example, let's see, you're probably going to go concealment. You probably want to put adrenaline rush. You probably want to put top grade, and there's your build. For a lot of cruisers, I would rather have radio location to know where the nearest enemy destroyer is or surfaced submarine. But I don't have that with IFHE. I don't have room in the build. I have to sacrifice something else. I sacrifice top grade gunner, for example. But these two skills almost work in tandem, right? I buff my reload and then I penetrate more, right? Okay, so now I have to give up concealment in order to fit, but that just feels bad. And that's the true problem with cruisers. Or maybe you've got a secondary-based cruiser and you want pack-a-punch. Well, you can't do that with IFHE and concealment. You have to give something up. So most people are just going to automatically give up IFHE on cruisers. It's just too hard to get it to work. Well, the 4-point skill being recommended, it is a bit of a troll. That is true of Uniball. The big one for this one is that the consumables of your anti-air is firing, then your consumables are reduced quicker, which could help with a heal, for example, if your ship has a heal or something like that. But yeah, it's not that useful. Same thing with the 2-point skill here. It's not that useful either, frankly. But again, with IFHE, the big problem is it's just too damn expensive. If IFHE was a 2-point skill, then there's some room in the build, okay? But again, you know, if you do that, then you're talking about sacrificing like priority target or something like that in order to fit IFHE. And that's honestly the biggest problem with IFHE for cruisers. It's just finding the right place to put it. On top of that, you have cruisers at tier, oops, that's a tier 7, at tier 8 that are frankly just going to be better for farming battleships, and that's going to be like the mines, right? Let me put the mines on here, and look, you've got one quarter HE pen. You already pen 38. You don't need IFHE, right? Hey, Uniball, Jinx, there you go. You don't need IFHE. So, one problem I see a lot of players running is that they like to run IFHE on cruisers. Now, let me take a look at a tier 7 cruiser, because I was talking about how at tier 7, when you go down one level, you lose out on the penetration. So, Toulon is probably a bad example because it's got 305s, yeah. Easy fix, play Bayard without concealment, yet still play. You could do that too, right? But I'm just saying, like, it just kind of feels bad to play a 155 millimeter armed cruiser, you know, and you're like, oh, I'd really love. Here, DeGrasse is a great example. I love the ability to farm, enemies, right? But with 152s, you only pen 25. Let's throw
No.
hello, Grunty. Let's throw this dude on again. All right, and boom, IFHE. What do I pen now? 31, because it's now 1/6 HE pen instead of 1/5. Okay, so IFHE is absolutely not worth it below tier 8 for cruisers. Again, maybe there's a niche here or there, but for the most part, you're not going to gain anything from IFHE. Okay? So, I highly recommend if you're a cruiser enjoyer, um, I wouldn't bother. There's one case where I actually enjoyed IFHE on my cruiser, and that was with the tier 8 heavy cruiser Charles Martel. And I had IFHE on my captain here for a very niche specific reason. I was playing in ranked, and that IFHE gets me to 42 millimeter of pen. And at the time, it was ranked tier 8 only, and on the American server, North American server, there's an awful lot of American battleships, and 42 millimeters gets me penetrating deck plate armor of American battleships. That's the only reason I picked IFHE on my Charles Martel, because I knew there would be a lot of American battleships. But even then, it's still not good enough for your mainstream battleships. So I just don't recommend IFHE on cruisers in general. Like Pensacola, for example. That's a heavy cruiser. What do I pen already? I already pen 32. Why do I need to pen more? I don't. So for heavy cruisers, absolutely not. For light cruisers, nah.
I like it on the tier 6s, but it's the only tier where I like it.
Why?
Because tier 6 light cruisers pen 25 millimeters. Tier 6 and tier 7 battleships have 26 millimeter bows.
Right.
So you don't even pen battleships at all.
And this is another
IFHE there, you get to penetrate 31. So you can
Right.
penetrate every single battleship you face except for the tier 8s.
Right. And this is another example of, like, you really need to look at the armor viewer of the tier that you're thinking about and then saying, is this important to me or not?
I don't like it on the 7s anymore, because the tier 7s face way more tier 8 and tier 9 battleships. So
Exactly.
it gets less effective. But on the
Exactly.
6s, you get to penetrate a bit more. So I think
Sure.
it's worthwhile there.
The only problem with that, like I said, is that you're typically going to be sacrificing something to do that, and probably going to be concealment at a tier 6 level. But
it depends on your commander. Like if you have a 21-point commander, like the tier 6s typically don't need superintendent because most of them don't have a here. So
Correct.
you kind of have the points there.
Well, yeah. Okay. So, again, if you do this, you're probably going to go with top grade gunner, and then IFHE, and then adrenaline rush, and that's pretty much your build. You don't have any room for anything else. Again, if you want radial location, you can't take that.
No, but that works, like as a damage build.
Yeah, if you're just going pure damage farming, that's fine. But again, it's a very niche use case for IFHE. You're not gonna. It's not going to be one of those things where you're just going to assign it and then apply that for every ship of a line going from tier to tier. Hi, Dubong. How you doing? It's something that's only for specifics.
Oh,
now,
100% agree. It's tier 6 specific and nothing else.
Right. Now let's talk about the real tough one that a lot of people struggle with comprehending, and that's going to be destroyers. Destroyers are very difficult to recommend IFHE on. Let's take a look at, for example, I know Albenham isn't a gunboat, but it's got the 127s, okay? Let me go and just change command, and it's a premium, so I can just throw some other random unspec'd captain in here so you can see. So we're just going to go do that, and then where's IFHE? IFHE is a 3-point skill for a captain of a destroyer. And here's the problem with that, is it's going to compete with Superintendent, with Survivability Expert, and Adrenaline Rush. So, 127s, 21 millimeters armor. Oops. IFHE, wow, 26 millimeters armor. At the high tiers, okay, that's what, light cruiser bows and a couple of battleship bows we looked at earlier. That's about it. And you lose half your fire chance. And the ability to take one of the other 3-point skills that you really want. So, personal opinion, I have not found IFHE useful on the vast majority of destroyers out there.
There is one exception where you can consider it.
Which is?
And that's the 100 millimeter gun destroyers.
Which is exactly where I was going. You read my mind, my dude. So, Kitakaze and Harugumo and Akizuki have 100 millimeter guns. What's up there, bud? Huron will get your pen up to 26. Fire chance is already bad. Might as well. I guess. I don't know. But let's take a look at Kitakaze, okay? Kitakaze has this magical 30 millimeter pen because, unfortunately, during testing, she wasn't. They weren't doing well enough for Wargaming's metrics at the time, requirements, and so they gave her this magic 30 millimeter pen. Now, IFHE obviously then gets you to that magical 100 or that magical 32 millimeter pen. Now, the problem is you lose half of your fire chance in doing so, and that's quite a punishment. I used to run IFHE. I will tell you, if you're running IFHE in a Kitakaze or an Akizuki or Harugumo, you're doing it for one reason only. Florida Panthers, thank you for the follow. And that is to farm battleships. And quite frankly, if you're not really farming if you're trying to win, farming battleships in a Kitakaze frankly isn't the way you're going to win. You're going to win by beating other destroyers in a gunfight. And you automatically have 30 millimeter pen. You'll pen every destroyer except for a couple with their 50 millimeter plating, but even then, IFHE won't help. So, I don't recommend IFHE even on the Kitakaze and stuff.
Wouldn't take it either, but it's the one thing where you can consider it. By the way, the Z42 falls into the same category. And I guess there is technically it has 105s, but with quarter pen it sits at 26. So,
okay.
But it's more of an AP ship, and the same is true for the Fenyang. You're probably better off leaning into the AP there than getting your pen for the HE up.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. Oh, because I don't have 10 listed. Derp. Here. So, yeah, I mean, it just. What you're doing then is you're taking a ship that, like, okay, here's the 105s, 26, you know. Okay, now you're at 32. There's the magic number, but the AP is just so much better.
Yeah, the idea behind it is, like, you want to shoot AP in the ship, no doubt, but you don't have improved pen angles, so sometimes when you're facing bow and battleships, you're forced to shoot the HE, so might as well get the pen up. At least that's the idea for people who take the skill there. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's correct, but...
Right. Now, you guys were asking about the hull. Let's go ahead and buy her, and then we can talk about IFHE on the hull, which is, of course, the new shiny. So let's drop that and that and that. There's our hull. All right. Change commander. Let's put Kong. Okay. So, what do you get for right now? You already have 34. So, HE is not necessary to pen. Oh, here. To pen the 32. And IFHE gets you 42 millimeter pen. Big deal. It's not worth it.
The ship is already stuffed for captain points. Which is a problem for most destroyers. Like, you're stuffed for captain skills already. Like,
Right.
even if there was no penalty, I probably wouldn't be able to take this skill on a destroyer because I don't have 3 spare points for this.
See where I'm going with this already? So if you've got a standard destroyer build, maybe you want radiolocation, there's no room for IFHE unless you're going to drop Superintendent, Survivability Expert, or Adrenaline Rush. And these 3 are just so much better overall. Glacial, I'm doing fine, thanks. How are you?
Like, I could have a 30-point captain there and I still wouldn't be able to fit IFHE in.
Right. So I just don't think it's worthwhile to look into IFHE for any destroyer, frankly. Again, there might be a niche or two where maybe you pen like that one ship that you really care about, but if you're playing in random battles, even if you're playing in ranked, it really doesn't matter too much. If your destroyer has heals, might think about what, Casey? It's so hard to even take radiolocation on mini destroyers because you want those 4 points elsewhere. Right. So, you know, it's one of those things where if Wargaming waved a magic wand and made it so that the skill cap was 25 points or something like that, hey, that would be great. Now I maybe could consider IFHE. But it's just too expensive right now to even put that out there. So again, for those of you guys thinking about IFHE, once again, the quick and dirty is for destroyers. Just know, except maybe the 100mm destroyers, if you're specifically trying to farm battleships, which in 2025 doesn't really get you the win anyway. Focus on farming or killing the enemy destroyers. For cruisers, there's a couple cases, again, if you're just playing a damage farming cruiser, but there's better damage farming cruisers that automatically have the ability to pen 32mm of armor. So, like, what's the point? If you're talking about removing Survivability Expert, yes, if it's got a heal, but the thing is, Survivability Expert and Superintendent work hand in hand if you've got a heal, because you heal more of your ship's HP pool each time you heal. That's why Superintendent on Heal Destroyer and Survivability Expert are so helpful. So again, on light cruisers, it's going to be useful. On heavy cruisers, probably not useful at all. And then for battleships, it's really only useful on the Schlieffen line battle cruisers, the German battle cruisers. Beyond that, you're probably not going to want to put it on anything else. IFHE on Jinan or Smolensk. Okay.
No point.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look. Where's my Pan-Asian? Here we go. Here's my Smolensk. Let's go ahead and assign commander on that. Let's just put Oven Chicken on. My 130's pen 22mm armor, okay? What do I get if I go to IFHE? Oh boy, 27. Why bother? Why
And
bother?
that's the Smolensk. The 127s on the Shinan don't even get you to 27, I think. They only get you to 26.
Yeah.
Like, it's basically the same as for destroyers. Like, this...
Yeah. And that's even more expensive, so you lose out on even more. So I wouldn't do it. I experimented with it before on the Smolensk. It's just it's not helpful. You give up too much. Incheon. It's got the 203s. You already penned 32. So why do you need IFHE? And Jinan wants the fire chance. And frankly, so does Smolensk. So to cut the fire chance in half really hurts. So, yeah. So there you have it. IFHE is a skill that everybody wants to take, and it's just not as useful. Honestly, if you're playing a farming cruiser, I'd look into heavy HE shells instead as a better choice. Yeah, you don't penetrate as much, but when you do penetrate, you do 10% more damage. Yay. But even then, that's another kind of niche skill. So that's my Zath Chat on IFHE. It's going to get to YouTube later, of course. YouTube, when you see this, if you got any questions, any specific ships you want to ask about, anything that you didn't quite understand in our talk, please, of course, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. And, of course, if you like the video, do the thumbs up on it. Share it with other people. It really does help quite a bit, you know, with the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. IFHE Atlanta. Oh, my Atlanta. Tier 7 Atlanta. Where are we? Here. You already have, with the 127s, 21 millimeter of pen. So I'm just doing this to get to the IFHE. 26. Against a tier 6 and 5 battleship, if you're top tier, yeah, you could say, I suppose it helps, right, Grunty? You go past the 25 millimeter threshold. That's about
you're
it.
top tier, but you're tier 7, you're facing 8s and 9s a lot.
Yeah.
So it falls in the same category like the 150-ish millimeter tier 7 cruisers.
Mm-hmm.
I probably... Like, the one exception here is this. If you want this for a tier 7 ranked build specifically, I can see it, because you're guaranteed equal tier.
Yes. The other option
But for randoms, no.
The other option is if you are playing operations or asymmetric battles, because typically you will run into lower tier ships there. That's the only time where the IFHE really is going to shine. But frankly, again, for like in Atlanta, I would rather have the heavy HE and SAP. You know, and yeah, again, you're probably going to want survivability expert anyways. So yeah, that's the problem with IFHE. It just doesn't do enough to make it worth your while at this point. So, all right. Thanks for listening, and there you have it.